King of Podcasts proudly presents The Broadcasters Podcast. The Broadcasters Podcast, a weekly media commentary talking about traditional and digital media headlines and talking to the content creators out front and behind the scenes. Here is the King of Podcasts.
This is episode 121 of the Broadcasters Podcast. Thanks for being here with me. I really appreciate it. And of course, mentioned right at the top of the show, king of Amazon.com. Right now, I'm looking to get a good push of getting more people directed to that special link to Amazon. And I hope you'll consider going to kingofamazon.com. And also some other ways you can also help out. If you want to go ahead and help out with a Cash App donation or a PayPal donation, should you like to, you can do so by going to paypal.me/kingofpodcasts. Or look for me on Cash App at King of All Podcasts. So you can also just drop right there if you would like to. But again, most importantly, the best way you can help out this show, first of all, please subscribe to the show on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/JBRASCO951. Or just look for King of Podcasts. You'll see, search for that. You'll find me there. And you can subscribe to me there. You'll find all my programming right there, plus so much more. And also subscribe to the show wherever you find this podcast, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you find it. And I hope you'll consider doing that. So let's go and get started. A couple things going on right now. Overseas movie and TV productions are now starting to proceed. They're going to move forward. We're going to talk about a few places where they're starting to get the cameras lit up, get the grips out, get the cables out, and start rolling. Lights, camera action, it's back. And it'll be a matter of time before Hollywood gets that, but not before some major things happen within the industry right now because of the lockdown. As a result, the economical lockdown and the ramifications of the pandemic. We'll talk about that as we continue going forward. And I will not have part 3 of my interview with Dave Pratt, which is the Hall of Fame broadcaster that I've had on for the last 2 shows. I've had a 3-part interview I'm in the middle of that I've been broadcasting to all of you this week, the last couple weeks. I'm going to hold off on the 3rd part only because I have something that I had recorded earlier this week that I really want to get out on this program, even though it would have been pertinent to this program in the first place. But I recorded this earlier this week, and I want to include it into this program tonight. Given various issues going on with terrestrial radio and the decrease it's getting and the business issues that are going on with the radio networks, okay? The companies that own the largest majority of radio stations, they're all hurting right now. We've talked about their furloughs, their pay cuts, how their CEOs have also taken pay cuts. And we're wondering how these stations are going to survive after because their advertising is declining badly. So I decided to go ahead and take a couple of stories going forward that have been talked about when it comes to Rolling Stone. And I forget what other site I took from. But the idea was to really dig in deep into what radio should be doing now to change and adapt to audience in real time. The idea is radio needs a revival. And it's not just the same old run-of-the-mill, let's just continue to talk like we always do. I really go into a real constructive conversation and throw out a bunch of ideas that I really think are very feasible for these radio stations to implement right away. And I hope they'll consider it. I hope there will be some people in the industry that listen to this podcast. This word will get to the David Felds or the Bob Pittmans of the world or whoever it is that handles programming for radio stations across the country. The people in control of programming. We know it's not the program directors. We're talking about the people in regional or in national aspects. If they happen to hear something and take something of what I say out of this, it will help radio find its footing going forward. I really believe that. So with that said, I have a 48-minute rant that I really did, which I encompassed a couple of stories which brought into my argument. What I'm going to take is a 30-minute clip of it because I give some context, which I've already given on this program before. But what I want to do this time is I want to go ahead. You already know the context if you've been listening to this show for any length of time. For any amount of time, you know what my feelings are on radio. You know what I've been talking to Dave Pratt about in the last few weeks. But I feel like with this time right now, it's more important that I want to get my message out to those people in radio, and hopefully they will respond, actively. That they'll be active in doing something about this. Because there are people talking, but, there got to be some really good ideas that come out. And I feel like I've given a couple. And I want to go and give those out. So I'm going to present a 30-minute clip of what I recorded earlier this week. You can find the complete clip on my other podcast called When I'm Not Podcasting. Or you can find it on my YouTube channel. I posted it there initially. But I also rebroadcast in audio form there. But really, the 30-minute clip I'm going to play tonight is this is what I really want people to get out of what I talked about. Because the other one was just to give an extra 20 minutes worth of context. But this 30-minute clip is the actual breadth of my constructive criticism, my pitch to the radio companies in order to get terrestrial radio back off the ground. And so I'll bring that up coming up a little bit later on. That'll take the place of what would be the third part of my interview with Dave Pratt. I'm going to table that for next week's show. But I wanted to make sure to let you know that. And I think it's a very important thing I get to go and say. Because obviously people, when it comes to radio, I know a lot of people like when I talk about it. Because there's some radiophiles here, much like myself. My radio brethren know about this show. And some of you get to listen to what I'm talking about here. And you see where I'm coming from. And you'll understand that I come from a good place here. We'll talk all about that. Let's go and move along to what was really big story going on, and that is this. This is huge. So the agencies are now getting affected by the pandemic. The economic ramifications have now hit them. It was just a matter of time. Deadline reports that WME is looking at Black Monday. 20% of their employees will be laid off, furloughed, or cut to part-time. So here's what we got. The agency now, again, some of these will be agents, a lot of support staff, and cuts will be felt deepest in music and non-agents in areas like shared services, and less so in core areas like lit and talent. So the fallout has shut down productions, movie theaters, and live arenas event, starving a debt-heavy parent company Endeavor of most of its revenue streams. So pipeline's hurting, so thus this agency is hurting greatly. Now, the formalization of the layoffs come after an ungodly swirl of speculative rumors, Deadline reports, racing around Hollywood, involving everything from agents exiting to become managers or to run the companies of star clients to other star agents, likely who would not be laid off being courted by rivals, Toledo's Ari Emanuel and Patrick Whitesell, focusing specifically on running IMG and WME respectively. There are probably shreds of validity to some of these rumors. Deadline has chosen to wait until these moves are formalized because these are people's lives we're talking about. So we're waiting. Lit agents caught in the layoff nets were also certainly not helped by a scorched earth standoff between the major agencies and the WGA over packaging and affiliated production businesses that left reps of writers of TV and film hanging on after those writers were pressed by the Guild to fire their agency a year ago. So again, the ramifications of the strike continue here. This labor dispute is now having another ultimate effect on what's happening here because the economics right now are not helping anybody. So there's a real shot of a lot of changes happening right now that will really have major ramifications going forward. And this affects content creators. For those of you out there, what's going to happen next? So in late March, there was an initial layoff of 250 staffers. And that was elimination of operational roles across Endeavor in which staffers could not perform their jobs from home. Okay. The chiefs of the company, Emanuel and Whitesell, would take, along with Endeavor president Mark Shapiro, would take a 50% pay cut. Pay cuts were expected to be as high as 30% for those making $65,000 per year. Now, this impacted top earners at companies across Endeavor, but UFC is not, because it's not wholly owned. UFC is one of the bright spots beyond leaders Dana White's vociferous efforts to get its brawlers back in the ring. UFC has their broadcast deal with ESPN that brings in regular payments. Keep an eye on this, folks. And then you have the stock ramifications, the shareholders. So no IPO. A pullback of the IPO that was going to be pushed out and presented was attributed to a softening market and shrinking demand from investors, and it made clear targets that wouldn't be hit. And they had to worry about their valuation and a lot of other things. So they said, okay, we're not going to pull this off right now. There you go. And every agency in the story out there has enacted some form of these cuts. More likely will occur at percenteries and studios. This is the latest of the pain that will only get worse than a long road recovery ahead, altering the Hollywood landscape forever. This really says a lot. And honestly, I don't know what's going to happen here. I'm wondering if there's people that are looking to do something here to really make a big difference. I mean, there's a lot going on. It's tragic. Looks like probably a lot of good people are going to get laid off. And the way the Hollywood business goes now changes. I mean, who knew a pandemic could do so much damage? But again, this is where people have to understand, even though there are issues where, there's the safety, there's obviously people that err on the side of, we have to be safe, we have to keep locked down until there's a vaccine. Okay. I'm not putting politics into it. I'm just saying there are those that have that argument, those that say reopen the economy. We cannot sit here and let all these companies and let all these employees lose their jobs and all these companies fall and crash and burn. So again, we're seeing how it's going across the media industry, across the board. The only people not being affected are streaming media. So anybody that is digital is not affected. Actually, they're thriving. It's the establishment that's hurting a lot. But again, you can't let these digital outlets continue to just go on without content. I mean, yeah, Netflix might have enough for up to next year, and some of the other ones have been building up content and getting it ready. They had production ready to go. But next year's a problem. Where are they going to go for content? And there's so many places for content to be displayed and to be offered that all these new networks, all these new streaming services, they need content. They might not be hurting for content right now because they have their initial launch or they have something that they have right now in the can. But that evergreen content is going to run out. And that's going to be a problem. Another story from Deadline is about how the world's biggest producers are plotting their way out of the pandemic. One of the problems is that you have a lot of issues where some programming is done in China, or there might be people that are dealt with in China that also have a bit of a relationship here. Now, here's one of the things I want to talk about, because in this story, we learn about what production is being done overseas. Obviously, United States, it's not ready. California and New York are not going to be ready to go ahead and get production back on board. No lights, camera, action, no Broadway, not for the foreseeable yet. We don't have even a deadline as to when the reopening will begin to even have some kind of production happen. I mean, it's funny. Yes, All Rise, the CBS drama, actually tried to get a show off, and they were able to go and pull off an episode using Zoom, but that's a novelty. You cannot do that for everybody. That will not solve everyone. But, they did put it together, and that's commendable. Quite a good experiment. I mean, that's at least trying to go and think outside the box. Deadline has spoken to the UK-based bosses of 8 of the biggest production groups in the world. Production groups that boast combined revenues of more than $10 billion. So here's what's going on. So there are battles right now to keep their programs on air and the relentless efforts being made to restart production safely around the world. Creative leaders are nothing if not talented problem solvers dealing with the ultimate test of ingenuity. Conversations show that traditional rivalries are being cast aside and that collaboration is now king as companies work together to overcome the crisis. And the industry has become a hotbed of development, with some predicting that ideas boom once COVID-19 has receded. Above all, the interviews show that problems are plentiful, but optimism is not in short supply. So ITV Studios, they were impacted much because one of the shows that no longer has content is the reality show Love Island, which is a huge viral show in the UK. It's one of the highest rated shows right now. BBC Studios, 80 of their shows have been derailed. Director of Content Ralph Lee describes it as the biggest single interventional shock that's hit our sector. All 3 Media and Demal Shine Group are reluctant to put a number on the damage. CEO of Argonaut, James Burstall, says the production group behind the UK version of The Masked Singer said filming was halted on 5 of its 30 shows that it had in production. So UK is getting hurt right now, but the production chiefs, the safety of your employees, crew, and on-screen talent are top priority in the first flushes of the crisis. So every territory will have its own set of circumstances, and every production within that territory will have its own unique set of circumstances. So there are also a lot of people that have been furloughed and laid off. ITV had 800 staff that have been furloughed, producers mostly. 370 at Endemol. Like, that's a lot of people out of work, which is unfortunate. So next to those shows that are being still continued right now. But good news is on the horizon, because there is content that is getting started already. Here we go. Deadline.com again got all the stories this week. They report a return to production because several series are going to be coming back. Health and safety production protocols have been endorsed by the national government, so production can restart now. Film and TV shoots are already safely underway, according to the New Zealand Film Commission, and they confirmed that. So one of the things they have are the sequels to James Cameron's Avatar. Those are in production right now. And a TV version of the Lord of the Rings series that will be going to Amazon Prime. So Cameron and producer John Landau were filming live-action elements of the big-budget sequels of Avatar when the pandemic struck, and now they've continued to work on the film's virtual production in California on the visual effects. But now, production has begun again. It's a combined budget of more than $1 billion. Earlier this year, release dates were announced for each film. Avatar 2 on December 17, 2021. 3 will be in 2023. Avatar 4 in 2025. Avatar 5, December 2027. So you got an Avatar universe. And with one of the biggest movies ever produced, that's huge. Amazon has a mega budget series update of the Lord of the Rings franchise. Hundreds of cast and crew were sent home in mid-March. And the series was filming the first 2 episodes of the series. And so season 2, so Deadline reported in conjunction with an early season 2 renewal for the fantasy drama, Lord of the Rings series was to go on a 4 or 5 month hiatus after filming the first 2 episodes. No plans for production to resume just to finish the 2 episodes, with a shutdown segueing into the planned 4 to 5 month hiatus. And we're learning that the Czech Republic is now reopening its doors for production as well, Deadline reports. So, where it's safe, content is getting created once again. And, getting back to the other story, the optimism is the fact that you have a lot of people, a lot of writers at home with a lot of free time on their hands to think things up. Will we have some COVID-19 related type of stories? Absolutely. But I'd like to think there might be some books that have been written during this time. I'd like to think that some screenplays have been written during this time, and some real great ideas have been collaborated here during this time. Some showrunners have gotten some time to put some things together on their programs. A lot of different ideas. I can imagine. When you have that much time just to sit at home and quarantine, you got time to think. You got time to produce. So imagine all that. That could be quite interesting. I'd like to see where it goes. Now, when it comes to other entertainment, live events, let's talk about that, because now we're going to see what live events are going to be doing going forward. The NFL schedule was released today. So the NFL is planning to go ahead and move ahead with programming. Or they're going to go ahead with football games. So first of all, Live Nation right now is looking to see what the NFL schedule looks like tonight, so they can find out the availability of NFL stadiums for big concerts coming up. Because obviously, if there's going to be live events with the social distancing and the spreading out of people, then we're going to have larger stadiums be booked for events that will be at partial capacity. So here's what's going on. An interesting fact here. 65,000 Ticketmaster shows, 9,000 Live Nation shows have been impacted by the pandemic. But what's funny here is 5 to 10% of ticket holders have chosen refunds. The rest have opted to wait for their shows after being postponed. That's really great. A Live Nation poll of 8,000 North American concert fans showed most all of them are willing to return to concerts going on 2 conditions. Venues are thoroughly disinfected, blah, 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 I can't speak. And there's easy access to hand sanitizer. So right now, Live Nation rep artists are being communicated with on a daily basis. Company is looking at masks, reduced capacity, touchless concessions, and expanded use of digital ticketing technology. And they're working with medical experts and public health officials and procedures, and federal and state and government in the U.S. and authorities in other countries to develop reopening phases for each market. Like movie theaters, live event companies are another group that have seen their entire business go dark. But Live Nation says is the biggest, and being the biggest, they say they have enough available cash to last in the current situation for about a year. So they're not hurting for cash right now. They're actually going to hold on pretty good. Very interesting story there. So I mentioned the All Rise Quarantine episode. I'm not going to stress more than that. A couple of the things I'm going to bring up is this. The NPR, National Public Radio, have also felt the brunt of the pandemic, undergoing cuts in pay benefits. So the story from this is being done in a bid to save jobs, quote, and support the future of NPR. So there's projected losses over the next 2 years of $53 million. But wait a minute, didn't they just get $75 million from the latest stimulus package, the CARES Act? I'm just wondering. Employees' base pay will be reduced on a sliding scale of up to 9% through September 30th. Workers will be offered furloughs. And employer contributions to their 403B retirement plan are going to stop. Workers making less than $80,000 a year won't see their pay cut. That's an interesting story. But again, they're getting help from the government. So I don't understand what this is going on and why they're getting this cut right now in the first place. But anyway, that's one story. Another story that I'm learning about right now, which is quite interesting, even with the pandemic going on, is that we have new content coming out. I just saw the Local Now app. So Byron Allen, after making the big windfall on his settlement with Comcast, he's putting that money into a new app, Local Now. Good for him. Congratulations. All of this Entertainment Studios content is going to go somewhere. He's using it for digital services. Great for him. Let's go and talk about that real quick, as a matter of fact. Now, it is a subsidiary of the Weather Group, of which Byron Allen owns. So the idea is it will offer up-to-date news, weather, traffic, and sports updates geared to each city it serves. And if you watch on the website, it'll prompt you to enter your zip code before you start watching, and then you can start watching. You can make sure you're getting your local news. They're also going to have other programs that's getting in there that throw free movies in the mix. That's pretty cool. So there's a lot of that going on right now. Local Now. Byron Allen, congratulations. WGN America is going to go forward creating a new news network. So with the establishment meeting going on right now and the lack of faith and trust in establishment media, there is room for other networks to come out. Well, we now know of this one. WGN America has hired its main anchor team, and they're going to launch a national newscast with a pledge to deliver unbiased cable news, according to the Chicago Tribune. So Nexstar Media Group now, which owns cable channel WGN in Chicago, and nearly 200 TV stations across the country, announced a start date for News Nation. The idea, according to Perry Sook, the chairman and CEO of Nexstar, says this will be hard news, 100% absent of bias. We're so serious about that, we are hiring a panel of rhetoricians, to review our broadcasts for unconscious bias that may creep into the words we use and the reporting that we do. So WGN America has hired 30 of the 130 to 140 staffers that will employ in Chicago to launch this new 3-hour nightly newscast. In addition to the unnamed main anchor team, WGN America is in negotiations with weekend anchor teams and staffing with network quality correspondents. So there will be no names you will recognize today, but those you might recognize down the road. And then the Chicago-based newscast will then work with the 5,400 journalists at Nexstar's TV stations across the country to supply local reports. So again, News Nation will be broadcast to more than 75 million homes from WGN's facilities in Chicago's North Center neighborhood, nightly from 7 to 10 p.m. Nexstar completed its $4.1 billion purchase of Chicago-based Tribune Media in September, creating the largest local TV station group and moving WGN's TV, radio, and cable stations under the Dallas company's ownership. So that's a big story right there. Keep an eye on that whenever they get that launched. News Nation. Keep an eye on what that's all going to be about. There we go. All right, time for me to go ahead and continue here on the Broadcasters Podcast and present my argument, my constructive criticism, if you will, about the current state of radio and how radio needs a new revival and how the pandemic should force the hand of radio to change their advertising model, take away some of the parameters that are hampering them and really preventing them from succeeding, because they are doing it to themselves. And I hope my argument holds water. Here's what I said earlier this week on my podcast called When I'm Not Podcasting. So again, AM, FM radio, there are certain things that are supposed to be helpful, but it's gotten so much harder because the stations have gone through layoffs after layoffs after layoffs, and the kind of manpower and the kind of resources that you need in order to keep people in touch and in line of what's going on is gone. And then companies like iHeartRadio, they're going to artificial intelligence to kind of replace the human component, the human element. That human element is gone. And the thing is, you need the human element not just to be somebody there to be a voice, but somebody that knows what they're doing to keep you entertained, keep you calm, keep you engaged. Well, how many people are out there that do that are not just morning shows? And at this point, a lot of these morning shows are irrelevant because people were not on the road for the last 6 weeks or more because they had no reason to go out. So they're not going to put on the radio out to go grab some coffee, grab some breakfast, do whatever errands they had to do, drop the kids off at school. They had none of that to do, so they're all staying home. So morning radio is irrelevant. And radio did not decide to make any changes, decided not to do anything to try to give a reason for people to go and listen. Because music streaming doesn't have a human component. There's nobody there telling you about the songs, telling you about things that are going on that are there. I mean, radio, before we had digital streaming, back in the 90s, before we had internet, that's what it was for. It was another way of engaging the people. It was a way of community. We don't have community right now. Community is social media. Well, there's certain things from social media that need to be taken now in order to make things better for radio, and that's what they're not doing. They think, oh, we'll just add some things on social media to accompany what we're doing. No. You need to create your own community, not just take the community that's there to promote your product, because that's a cop-out. You have a marketing material and an AM/FM signal. You're drawing no one to it. And maybe you're drawing people to your digital stream, but again, who's going to sit through all those damn commercials? Nobody. People go to streaming media and go to satellite for lack of commercials. You got to have some, of course. But the way things are done now, it's totally different. People don't want commercials. And more importantly, when they're listening into something, you don't have the voices and the talent that basically could account to letting people stick around and listen 10, 12 minutes for commercials for you just to get that host to come back. Howard Stern had that kind of clout. He still does it now, 6, 7 minutes of commercials so he can go away and do what he needs to do and have time to get the sponsors. But the truth is, there's that. And what are you going to do there, right? So the familiarity gap. In the story from Rolling Stone, live events, many industries, all the things they would do to promote, with certain sponsors or events, those are all out. Well, so what are you going to do? You're just going to make it so people don't talk about anything? Like, you have nothing for your radio people to talk about except your websites and your social media. And the worst thing you could be doing is taking celebrity gossip and gossip in general, which means nothing. It is the cheapest, easiest way to do things. It's a TMZ gimmick. Why does that even matter? Why does it every radio show, if you listen to it, they're all talking about the same thing? Haba, 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 haba. They're not saying anything special. That's the problem. So, again, they talk about K-Rock being looked at as a relative anomaly in the alternative radio format. So now you're basically flipping just to match every other alternative station. That's what's going on, because alternative, from what it was called as a rock format, is now more of a pop, hip-hop leaning format. That's what it's become. And the biggest thing is that there wasn't any reason for those songs that are called alternative to not be played on mainstream radio. See, the problem is that pop radio became very antiseptic. Pop radio should not be pop radio. We shouldn't even have that. We should be back to top 40. We should be back to mainstream radio. That's what radio should be once again. It's what's in the mainstream. And what's in the mainstream is what's on social media. Now, if I had a station now that I could target towards a younger audience, I don't see how you can't get these people to go to radio again. They all have a way to listen on the digital devices. They all can find, whatever they want. They can go to TuneIn. They can go to iHeartRadio. They can go to radio.com. You can get those app platforms back up and running again. Maybe they'll even go in their car and they'll say, you know what? I don't want to turn on the Bluetooth right now. I'll turn on the radio. I'm not going to use the CD player. What is that for? No, they can actually listen to the radio. You have it tuned in right, and you play the songs they're actually listening to, not the songs that you want them to listen to that are 8 to 12 weeks old or more. It's not that hard. All you have to do now is follow what people are listening to on the streams. Listen, the Billboard Hot 100. That's a mainstream chart. In the BBC world, in the world of Britain and anywhere else, they have global charts. The official chart represents Britain or the United Kingdom. And you know what they play? They play the songs that are on that chart. They're not afraid of what they're playing on there. They can go from anywhere, from a grime rap artist to an alternative rock artist to alternative hip hop leading artist to a dance artist to a pop artist. They're wide ranging. And as we just listened, as I just read, they're getting an increase in audience. So people are going to them because you know what? They have people that are on the air. It's a nationalized format, which you could do here. And people are listening to it. And they're engaged. I listen to the official chart. Their countdown show that comes on every Friday. You know what they do? People are in there. They're engaged. They're texting. They're sending messages, emails. They're on Facebook. They're on Twitter. They're on Instagram. They're wherever. And they're all responding back on a Friday afternoon. And people make it a point to go and listen in. And the artists, to see if their songs are going to be number one on the chart, they actually call in. They can actually get regular guests to come on a regular basis. What does Ryan Seacrest do? It's all agenda driven. It's not based on what they're on the chart for. It's what they can do for them. If it's like some American Idol project or something that's going to be to the benefit of iHeartRadio or to the benefit of somebody else. It's that. Plus, there's no human emotion to a show like Ryan Seacrest does on the radio, the American Top 40. Because you hear them talk about the songs and they say, oh, here's what I did and constructed. It took me some while. And, the songs are supposed to have this and this and this. But it's like we don't get to know who they are. There's no real human component, real human element to know who these people really are, which is really what's amazing, that music is being more engaging by seeing people doing the at-home concerts. BBC Radio, they have a live lounge. They have like an unplugged series called Live Lounge. Very popular. And you know what they do? They actually have a song right now, Times Like This. It's an all-star record like USA for Africa or Band-Aid, right? Maybe if you know what those are, Google it. Big celebrity all-star music single. And Times Like This became the number one song. A BBC Radio produced number one song, first time ever. It's a radio song. You would have known about the song initially by listening to the FM radio. And then you'd find it on social media after that. But it first started from the radio and triggered all the way down. Became viral. That's how songs used to get viral back in the day. Radio was where songs got viral. People that were on the air would make a song viral. That's how it first started. And that can happen again. TikTok. You could be using TikTok. You could be using YouTube streams. You could be following everything. And Billboard does it for you all together. Meanwhile, no, we don't want to do that because we don't control what's going on. Yeah, because they want power and control. They want to manage poorly the way that people listen to radio. Well, it sucks. The truth is, it's time for radio to go back and listen to what the people are listening to and what they're actually engaged to. Therefore, go back to Billboard as the standard and make radio stations mainstream, not pop. They should be mainstream stations. And the mainstream should actually be at the time. There's no reason to be 8 to 12 weeks behind the rest of the world. There's no excuse for that anymore. We're so real time now. We're on such a trending society. You just get into a trend and then you think, 8 weeks later, people are going to still be into it. No, you might be actually catching it at the peak of its point, but then it's going to be on the way down. And what does radio do? They run it to the ground. That's what they want to do because, they're going to just take a tried and tested hit because they don't trust themselves to make anything viral. They don't think they can do that. Or the powers that be will not allow them to because they know what's going on. Streaming is very important. I mean, now you have artists that will put out new songs all the time. Last year, Ariana Grande, she put out 2 albums simultaneous. And then there's others that are just honestly like, we can put out new songs whenever we want. Billie Eilish put out multiple songs, multiple singles, and put out an album, this and that. And they all do this. And you don't know when the album's going to come out. The point is, it's unpredictable, and you have no control of what music becomes hot and becomes popular. But meanwhile, the songs that are on the Billboard Hot 100 that actually gauge what the real audience is listening to, if you were playing those songs that were on that chart, you'd actually be doing better. And if you had actually people on that were actually able to engage and be able to connect to the audience in real time. So maybe you just do it by text. Maybe you don't take phone calls. Maybe you take messages online. Whatever you got to do. It's got to be much easier doing it that way. And you can actually engage to your audience. And you could also cherry pick what you want to listen to. And rock radio, there was a time back in the day where a station would be called progressive. And progressive meant, there would be people that would be on the air that would play new music or play other songs that were iconic or something that would just be like, they would kind of set the tone, set the pace, set the emotion so that you were engaged into what they were doing. And they would talk to you as you were with them playing the songs. They were your DJ. And they actually engaged with you. And they actually would keep you calm if there was a blackout, if there was a hurricane or an earthquake or whatever. They were there for you at your time of need. We don't have that now. So these are the problems that we have. Now, back into the original story here, while music fans faced with a sprawling field of streaming options may not need music radio, many in the radio community would argue they still need their DJs. Quote, you can still hear your songs everywhere, but these personalities that you listen to and grow up with can be the calming, soothing voice to help you feel better, escape, or give you information and news. This is the vice president for programming for a smaller radio company that owns 14 radio stations on the East Coast. I 100% believe that. I grew up in the 80s when there was news. I wanted Tom Brokaw to tell me the news because I grew up with Tom Brokaw. These people become your friends. We do perceptual studies and research studies, and people say, oh, they're like family. They're like my coworkers. Making changes now is bad for your brand because your listeners are used to these DJs and they're looking for the DJs you love. Well, then you cannot go with that because they're going to keep getting rid of them. And maybe you don't take hold of the DJs that are not in touch with today, are not in touch with digital disruption. You need to bring up people now. The new DJs that come up front, they need to be embraced in digital, completely engulfed in digital. That's where we need to be now. But again, the flexibility is bad because there's no engagement. AM/FM listenership down 5% from 2017 to 2019. Streaming platforms, SiriusXM, increased. SiriusXM, they actually follow viral, right? They have stations that are very narrowcasted. That's one thing, but they do that. But, for the most part, they might have a station that might be considered pop, but they're actually a mainstream station because they actually follow the charts. They actually try to put out songs that are not the norm because they're not trying to be radio. That's the reason why they're trying to do what they're doing, because they also don't play commercials. See, it's these things that you need to do that need to also change. And there's the reason for advertising. You don't need to be putting out that much advertising. I mean, you're not making any sponsors special by putting them first or last in a 6, 8, 10-minute block. It's ridiculous. it's not going to work. I mean, you might do that for talk radio for some certain, people that you listen to on talk radio that might keep people around. But you can't do that for music radio. When I looked at the blocks when I was working in radio, and I was saying I was working in iHeart, how the hell did they put in these commercials so long? They're so long. And then there's a point where certain sponsors are not even there. They're just make goods for programming they have to barter for, or they're forced to put out. And they're all these like ad rep firms, or they're all these like, big progressive Home Depot type ads we can listen to over and over. Well, we're not listening to those. And to put those on the regular radio, it doesn't make a difference. I would rather put out things that are local, that are actually in touch. Because what they're doing is also, radio could be actually taking those and putting them as sponsors, as opposed to getting them ads that are just running over and over that people are not even paying attention to anymore. You make them sponsors. Make Progressive a sponsor. Make them do this and that, and make them part of something within the actual content. Tag an hour with them as a sponsor or somebody else. But you got to do something else here. Those are all make goods. Unless you're getting paid for them, why are you going to do it this way? There's a different way to do it altogether. I mean, you got pre-roll ads that are going through your digital streams. There's other ways you could get those advertisements monetized. You think they're going to make that much off of AM and FM? No, they're not. But then most important, you could get AM and FM radio important again by making it where businesses, where they don't want to go ahead and set up all day listening to radio and they have to, put on a Bluetooth or find some kind of thing to make sure they have data or Wi-Fi to keep the music going. What's wrong with them having a radio that can be playing inside the building that can get it set up through the PA system, and then they'll be able to have music without having to worry about, trying to maintain some kind of a stream. They don't have to worry about Pandora or others and having all this stuff going on. Like, you can actually make it where people can listen to radio again by getting the businesses to take the radio again and put it on in their businesses and get them to go back to that again. Wouldn't that be smart? But the thing is, the advertising model has to change because, look, terrestrial radio advertising revenue has gone down every year since 2015. Now, radio companies have been in shaky financial ground for a while. As we know, iHeartRadio went through bankruptcy in 2018 and was able to restructure and reduce its billions of debt, but it still has debt on its books. But what if radio could pivot away from background listening and toward a more situation-based format, engaging listeners on whatever's relevant at that particular moment? Terrestrial radio has the unique ability to freewheel, so insiders say DJs should be allowed to change course at a moment's notice to best serve that community or their communities. Radio personalities are able to get updates while they're live on the air, which is not possible with pre-recorded satellite radio shows or podcasts. Yeah, music could change. You can let somebody have some autonomy of what's ever going on. But this complete authoritarian style of making things play the way they're supposed to be, and you have to have these certain songs played because of their research, which is bogus. You have other research out there. You have real research. You have Billboard doing great work to put stats out there. Just because you're not getting paid by them like you are media-based, that doesn't matter. I mean, you're not helping the artists. You're not helping the musicians. You should actually be working with the record labels to make more money off of them. You should actually let payola be coming back as far as I'm concerned. Like, go ahead and start taking things from the record labels. Get them to prop up prizes. Give them reasons for them to come back to you. Prop them up at concerts. Prop them up all together. Why can't you do that? What's so hard about that? Keith Dakin, who I was quoting from before, also said that it's the time to experiment. All of our stations are playing less commercials now, way less, because there's not as much advertising right now. That's the point. Get rid of the blocks of inventory thinking you're going to get that advertising back. No, even where I work at, we've cut the commercials down. We've cut them down a lot. I might have put out 3 to 4 minutes of commercials back in the day, but we're not doing that now. We changed our model because we know people are not listening to commercials. We might have a minute, maybe 2 minutes worth of commercials that people will listen through, but that's it. Because we know people are not going to sit through commercials anymore. Nobody wants to. Nobody wants to hear those. They're going to tolerate only a little bit of commercials at all, and that is it. And that's what's the whole point. So now, these are the issues right now. And again, local is the importance of the local stations. on how certain stations, listen, if these bigger companies cannot hold on to these stations, if after the pandemic, some of these stations are going to get let go, it's part of a fire sale, let them go and let local programmers take these over. Take them back so they can be programmed right. Because let me tell you something. Why isn't the global community and the other countries outside of the country, out of the U.S., they're doing so well? Because they are human element. They have a human component. They actually communicate to their audience. I'm telling you, look at any Spanish radio station in the Caribbean or in South America or in Central America. They're all engaged, and they all got good ratings. The UK has the same thing. Europe, loaded with great stations out there with a lot of good talent. And they're 24 hours a day programming live because that's what they do. That's how it used to be. That's how it should be. But for whatever reason, the U.S. lost its way. Deregulation and the corporatization of the entire industry just ruined it. But the truth is, it can still have a reason to come back. And you need to quit trying to go after the older audience. You need to be going after a younger audience. So start going younger. Start going after the Zoomers, the Boomers, not the Boomers. No, the Zoomers and the Millennials. Generation Z, go after Millennials. Start going after teenagers again. Go after those in their 20s. Find a way. Do not just think they're going to abandon you just because they're on social media, they're on TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, whatever. You might have them actually listen to the radio in the background. And guess what? If they're listening and they're on a Periscope or whatever they're doing, they might be listening to your station in the background. And then you actually have them listening to that station through their social media and a live stream. Some of those people are going to hear, oh, this station, where is that? I got to go look for it. And that's what they'll do. Because also, if you listen to playlists, you can only shuffle so many times and you change to a different playlist and it just doesn't feel the same. But now you have a point where you can actually control the change in the music. You can actually give them something different, something new, and actually you can help them curate music that's coming up. So they're not going to have to wait for some TikTok dance to come out and play to find a new song. You might know about new songs that are coming out, but then you also can get the audience a chance to call out and say, hey, what do you think of this song? We used to have the Wars. 10 o'clock, Battle of the Bands. You'd have two songs you'd put out that were brand new. One that was a recurring champion. Another one would be the challenger. You'd find out which song would do better. But that will be a time where you'd have new songs at night during the younger time. The younger people would actually be listening in. That's how it used to be. It can still be like that too. There's no harm in doing it. You don't have the advertisers right now. You might as well find a way to do it. And some of your advertisers, you might as well find some that are out there that are willing to go and put some money down for whatever and get them back. Like there are advertisers you can bring on that might have money that could be national, that they're not going to want car insurance, but get McDonald's, get Burger King, get all the food places, get whatever candies out there or chips or whatever kind of stuff. Like get something that's for a younger based audience. That's what you do. You get the music labels to promote the records, promote the new singles, stream it here, download it from iTunes, download it from wherever. Do that. Spotify and Pandora, they should be also promoting themselves on these stations to get more people to listen to them. So you have curated playlists, but then you also have radio that can also be in harmony. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can actually be both, believe it or not. Because then what you're doing for radio is if there's a new album, go subscribe to Spotify. You can listen to the album. But if you want playlists, come back to us. Then you make yourselves relevant again. Sounds like a really win-win situation. And take the commercials out. Take out as many as you can. And make somebody come in to actually spend some real money. And you know what? Maybe you don't need that many people to go ahead and come in live. If you want to nationalize it, do it. If you want to have local people, then let the local people handle it. I mean, I understand for some people it's kind of tough to get the kind of people there to go and kind of keep you engaged, but there's got to be a way to do it. I mean, there has to be a way. One thing you also need to think about is that, listen, the salaries you're paying some of these bigger stars, if they're not holding up anymore, you're already going to cut them. So when you're going to bring in new young talent to come in, they're going to have them multitasking, then have them become able to go ahead and go on the air and do other things for you and be able to micromanage whatever they're going to do. But then give them a chance to be on air. Incentivize them for taking a small payroll that they're going to, or, whatever kind of salary they're going to get, then go ahead and incentivize. I mean, that's how it used to be back in the day. Nobody ever expected a radio to get that much money off the bat. So then you give them a reason to be on the air. Because when they get on the air, then that makes more reason for them to take a smaller paycheck. Or you incentivize them by being able to take sponsors, just like the podcasters do, that are affiliate program or direct marketing. And you let them get paid commission for every time they promote something on the air. When something comes back, they get a bonus. You get a cut, they get a cut, win-win. And the sponsor gets it. How hard is that to do? Why can't you just do direct response and get rid of some of this bulk advertising crap and get some of this other programming out of there? Because the corporatization is hurting it. By being forced to take certain shows that nobody cares about, it's hurting as well. And that needs to change as well. Like, it just needs to. So you have an ad rep firm, iHeartRadio, you can get them to be doing something like that. More direct response. Because it's working. Look at everybody using pre-roll and listening to other content. That's what they're doing now. When Spotify has their freemium version, or you're watching YouTube ads pre-roll before you watch a video on Vivo, that's what's going on. So do the same thing. Relate. Because people listen to some of the ads like that. But, if you have a new album coming out, something that actually matters. Not just for the 50th time to hear about Progressive and Flow talking about, we could save you 15% on car insurance. We don't want to hear about that. People know what that is. They hear that commercial everywhere else. Just because they're spending much money, or Home Depot spending money to buy new potted plants, they don't care about that either. Actually bring on advertisers that actually people can care about. That's what you need to do. Now, let me move along here. Moreover, when a station personality is told to represent multiple markets, it can be harder for a station to solidify its own identity. And it makes it harder for the medium to stand off on satellite radio. But again, if you got to do it and you can keep it live 24/7 and take all the different responses or regionalize it, then do it. You have people from different markets. Have them just come on live. Don't make them voice track. Have them live. And then they can handle taking text or whatever, and you can, from a certain amount of audience. And you do that for several stations and different markets, and that's how you do that. That's not that hard. It really isn't. So now, another story I'm going to bring up here is from musicleagueup.com, because they asked the question, how can radio survive the looming recession? People turn to radio in times like this. Well, they're supposed to. Now, this is originally from Billboard, but of course they got a paywall like a mother, so I didn't want to worry about that. So I found it here. So again, radio isn't in the music business. Radio isn't the advertising business. The problem is radio needs to be back in the music business again, because that's how they're going to make their money back. Do you understand me? So radio, local businesses close and pare down budgets. Radio stations are uniquely positioned to suffer the consequences. Newspapers the same way. So since the bear market on February 24th, iHeartMedia stock price dropped 63.4%. And then the other companies, Cumulus and Intercom, the other top three radio companies, also their shares dropped. So they're losing money on the market front. But now, people are still listening to the radio, and businesses are buying fewer spots. So that's the whole point. You have more audience. So make music the focal point. Music is our message. That was a slogan WABC had back in the early 70s. Used to work. And they were one of the largest radio stations in the world. So you have this going on here, and, companies are losing their money. They're losing their shares. Key takeaways right now. Here's the other problem that's going on. Because not only radio are you getting hurt yourselves in many different fronts. You're not thinking about who else you hurt, because you are treating the music industry like a redheaded stepchild, because you don't pay proper royalties to those artists. We know that. The streamers do now. The Music Modernization Act changed that, but you're not doing it. You've been fighting the Local Radio Act for a long time. Well, I'm sorry. Sometime you're going to have to go and take care of the music business, so they'll take care of you. That's how it works. So key takeaways right now: lower ad revenues means songwriters and publishers will be paid lower royalties until stations' ad sales return to normalcy, if that ever happens. Largely, publicly traded radio companies have lowered their revenue forecasts Many companies are laying off and furloughing workers. Well, that's going to happen. But do you really think any of those people are going to be brought back? That's one thing you got to consider. These companies can't afford to bring anybody back. They cannot sustain being downtrodden 3-4 months at a time because they're already in dire straits as we speak. They're already in debt. They can't hold on to that much debt. They're going to have to fail. But those radio stations can be brought to somebody else that will take them over and do something with them. And the radio excels during a crisis. Well, that's what's supposed to happen. This is why it's not time now to make changes. Why are you going to do the same old, same old? Who are you serving with this? Advertisers are jumping ship. The music business needs help. And you cannot expect the streaming services to do what they need to do. They're doing their job. But radio has a purpose here. And there is no reason why you can't work on this to make it better. Now, we need a complete overhaul and change to radio. This is the time to do it. There is no excuse for this at all. We need to see a full significant change to the radio business altogether. Wholesale changes. Either these big companies make these changes, which they won't, or someone else that comes in to take these stations after this, when these are all sold off in some fire sale. I think that's going to happen for the good, even pandemic or not pandemic. Radio has a chance to come back. It's been debunked. It has been shot down that it would lose itself after television came back out. And then when FM radio came in, like there's always disruptions within the radio industry. But radio itself, yeah, podcasting's taking up a lot of what radio used to be. But the live and local portion, the real-time portion, the portion that actually can keep up with what's going on with the changing days and times, our tastes in music, and what we are entertained by, and what informs us. Radio is one of the easiest ways just to turn a knob on your car radio on. Or just find it on an app of many apps to listen to. I hope somebody listens to this and we actually get some real change. I hope you appreciate where I was coming from with all that, because honestly, when I think of, even after I finished that rant, I was trying to think about other things when it comes to radio, how there's no reason why these companies couldn't do something with these radio stations. I mean, it's saddening to me to see that people want to give up on radio altogether, and that's fine. You know, I can't complain. I can't push anybody away from that argument. I can try to debate all I want, but commercials are hurting so much. And radio is just looking for other alternatives, just like a corporate entity would. I'd like to see one company come out and change it all up. Because there's got to be somebody out there. It's not just one person that will change things. It's a network. It's a network of stations that can really make this difference. Change it all up. It can be done. I really believe it. So anyway, we're going to leave it there. Thank you for tuning in. Find out the show as you always do. Till next week, I will come back and conclude my conversation. At the end of my 90-minute conversation with Broadcasting Hall of Famer, Radio Hall of Famer, Dave Pratt, the Morning Mayor. We'll talk with him next week here on the Broadcasters Podcast. And just remember, content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast, presented by BroadcastersPodcast.com and KingofPodcasts.com. The Broadcasters Podcast is brought to you by KingofPodcasts.com/Amazon. If Amazon is good enough for the King of Podcasts, it most certainly is good for you. KingofPodcasts.com/Amazon. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program. The Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at KingofPodcasts.com.